We hear this phrase sometimes, knowledge is power. I remember going to school and seeing it posted on the wall, knowledge is power. And it's used all the time. And when we hear it, we kind of accept it as this very straightforward understanding. We take it at face value. We just kind of nod our heads along, because, right? I mean, who's going to argue that, right? Knowledge is power, right? And if it'll get you to read a book, okay. But when we're knowledgeable about something, we do have great power, right?
Yes.
There we go. There's a yes. Any other yeses? Any no's? There we go. Well, the word knowledge, it's defined in the dictionary as facts, information, and skills attained by a person through experience or education. It's a theoretical or practical understanding of a subject. And when we think about our lives in this perspective, we are inundated with knowledge, right? It's everywhere. Facts, information, any fact that you want. It's right there at the click of a mouse. Anything you have a question about, you can just click a button on your phone and you can ask Siri, or you can ask Alexa, or you can ask Google, or you can call your mom and ask. Information is everywhere. And it's doled out to anyone who's willing to just take one moment of time. And skills are readily available too, right? You can just look it up on TikTok or on YouTube, and you can learn how to do just about anything. It feels as though we are more knowledgeable than ever, right?
Yeah.
Oh. But somehow it feels that we know even less than we ever did, even though we're more knowledgeable, right? And some of us might say that this is because we have too much information available, right? It's overload. They would say that knowledge only applies to what we're able to recall. So just because you learn it, if you can't remember it, isn't really knowledge at all. And they would say that the amount of information that we have to wade through, it makes any meaningful pursuit of knowledge like a needle in a haystack situation. And have you ever looked for a needle in a haystack? It's tough stuff there. Now some of us, we might say that because we have too much information, the content matters, right? If the information and the facts and the skills are so easily available, but they have no practical application, they don't mean anything. So just because we can look up how old Cher is, or how tall Tom Cruise actually is, like this tall, doesn't really mean anything at all, right? Just because we can look up how rich Beyonce is, it doesn't do anything for our lives. And some would say that learning dance moves on TikTok, they don't really have a practical application. Now, I might argue that. And other people that were even more cynical than those two groups of people, they might say that in the current landscape that we live in, political and social, that it's too difficult and too dangerous to discern truth from lies, fact from fiction, and information from disinformation. And those cynical people, they would say that the information that we gain is at best incomplete and at worst misleading. And they say the information that we consume does more to strip us of our power than it does to empower us. And my friends, you might fall into one of these three categories. It's okay if you do. Or maybe you completely disagree with all of it. But regardless of where you stand on this, we can all acknowledge that despite all the information and so-called knowledge that we have, the trajectory of where we're going as a society and a culture, well, it's not trending in the right direction. Can we acknowledge that? So what do we do? What do we do with that understanding of our world today? Well, it's funny that you would ask that, or that I would ask that. Because Jesus has some things to say. He gives us an inclination in this scripture that's a portion of the Sermon on the Mount. And he says, you are the salt of the earth. But if the salt loses its saltiness, how can it be made salty again? It is no longer good for anything except to be thrown out and trampled underfoot. You are the light of the world. A town built on a hill can't be hidden. Neither do people light a lamp and put it under a bowl. Instead, they put it on its stand. And it gives light to everyone in the house. And in the same way, let your light shine before others so that they may see your good deeds and glorify Father in heaven. Do not think that I've come to abolish the law or the prophets. I have not come to abolish them, but to fulfill them. For truly I tell you, until heaven and earth disappear, not the smallest letter, not the least stroke of pen will by any means disappear from the law until everything is accomplished. Therefore, anyone who sets aside one of the least of these commandments and teaches others accordingly will be called least in the kingdom of heaven. But whoever practices and teaches these commandments will be called great in the kingdom of heaven. For I tell you that unless your righteousness surpasses that of the Pharisees and the teachers of the law, you will certainly not enter the kingdom of heaven. In this passage, it's from this very famous sermon. What immediately precedes it is Jesus teaching the disciples, much like we learned up here how to sing and how to dance to I'm a Little Teapot, right? And these lessons are an effort for him to pass on crucial information. Jesus is taking information from his heart and his brain, and he's handing it to the disciples, and he's saying, here, it's yours now. It's all about the kingdom of God. And he puts that responsibility and that onus directly on the disciples to learn. He doesn't tell them this is how you learn. He just says, learn, right? And learning entails taking information and putting that information into action. This passage is a complete reminder from Jesus that God is so much more than just knowledge, far more than just information that lies on a page. And if we're honest, that message often gets lost in church, right? You've been in this place and we've just talked about information, right? Sometimes we just become the information. And we come here and we just consume information. And we call it knowledge. And we assume that somehow it gives us power, right? If we tell the stories and we read the scriptures and we just talk about it. We don't apply it to anything. We don't attach it to our lives. We don't translate it to mean something to us. If we just learn the information, we're going to get something from it, right? No, it's not how it works. We can't just read words from a page and just give historical context and nice Greek and Latin translations, maybe a little Hebrew if you're daring. We can't just put information in our pockets and just go about our lives, right? That's not really learning. That's not really knowledge. Because our faith is not purely theology. And you could be a student and you could just study theology. But that's not faith. It's about the presence of God in our world. And our responsibility in our faith, in this walk that we have with God, is not to know about God. It's to know God. I'll say that again. It's not our responsibility to know everything about God. It's our responsibility to intimately know God. And in this passage, Jesus illustrates this concept that we are the hands and feet of God. We are the light of the world. We are the salt of the world. And the great Reverend Carolyn Lewis, she states that as disciples, we have to be the activity of God in the world. Knowledge is power. And if you've ever seen Spider-Man, with great power comes great responsibility, right? If you haven't seen Spider-Man, you should watch it, right? And in this season that we've talked about being present, not perfect, right, endlessly, and you're tired of me saying it, right? I'm going to keep saying it. We have to acknowledge and accept that responsibility. We're going to keep saying it. Present, not perfect, until it's permanently etched in your consciousness. Until it's the way that you walk through this world. Because comfort's what got us here, right? Comfort's what's got us disconnected and divided as a culture. Comfort's what's got us lost and feeling alone. And comfort's what allowed us to forget the work that we've done to get here. The work that we've been called to do by God. How many times have you heard somebody say, I know better? I know better. When they've done something wrong. And why is that? Why do we say that? Well, it's because we do know better, don't we? If you've ever said that, you knew better than to do what you did, but you still did it anyway, right? We have all of the knowledge and the information, but if we don't apply it to our lives, if we don't put it into practice, it really doesn't mean anything, does it? Who are we to call ourselves disciples of Jesus if we knowingly accept the wrongs of this world and we don't do anything about it? If we just sit by and watch injustice after injustice, who are we? Who are we to know that racism exists, to see it and to acknowledge it and to not act? Who are we to see the oppression of the poor and the separation of the marginalized and the plight of the hungry and not do anything about it? Who are we? The unmitigated calm. Knowledge without action perpetuates the disparities and oppression in this world. So what are we going to do about it? The truth is, churches spend way too much time talking about things. That's what we do, right? Talk about things, giving information and doctrinal statements instead of laying out practical understandings of how we live out our faith in our lives. But we, in this place, this body, this people, we're going to be different. We're going to be brave enough to acknowledge comfort, conformity, and complacency is something that we need to step away from. I'm not going to lie. I'm not going to lie to you. Friends, it's going to be hard. It's not going to be easy to break the bad habits and to do the work that elicits true change in this world, but that's the call that we've all been entrusted with, each and every one of us, that we might lean into our faith over the comforts of complacency, that we might reach for change even when the outcome is uncertain, that we might empower our knowledge with action. The truth is, in this moment and all the moments to come, it is up to you who you want to be. Do you want to be a person who knows about God? Do you want to be a person who knows God? You are the light of the world. A town built on a hill cannot be hidden. Neither do people light a lamp and put it under a bowl. Instead, they put it on its stand. It gives light to everyone in the house. In the same way, let your light shine before others, that they may see your good deeds and glorify your Father in heaven. Thanks be to God.